Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about territorial integrity. I recently came across a bit of information that really irritated me, and it had to do with home ownership and the government taking your home. In the United States, that's called eminent domain, when the government takes your home for the purpose of government use or the greater good or whatever kind of bullshit they want to call that. But this story took place in the UK, and it had to do with an elderly woman who just bought a home, and within 3 months of owning the home, she received a notice from what they call their council, which is like their city council. And they told her that her home was being taken by the government, and it was being taken because the home was considered dilapidated. Now, when you see photographs of the home, it does not look dilapidated at all, and there's no signs of the home being unfit for anybody to live in. But she was told the home is being taken by the government because it is dilapidated. It's going to be repurposed for immigrants to live in. That was the specific reason they were going to give this home that she just bought to immigrants. Now, the term that they use over there is compulsory purchase order. And that is the power to purchase or take rights over an estate in English land law, or to buy the estate outright without the current owner's consent in exchange for payment of compensation. In England and Wales, Parliament has granted several different kinds of compulsory purchase power, which is exercisable by various bodies in various situations. Such powers are meant to be used for the public benefit. This expression is interpreted broadly, but is subject to the test of overriding or compelling public interest. That part right there. Pushback. People have to push back. They're saying that they can take this and use it for the public good. But if the public good is what you call bringing in people from other countries that either A, do not want to assimilate, or have a culture that is so different that it is very difficult for them to assimilate into the laws of the land.
Look, all that don't matter. That's just wrong. Motherfuckers spend their hard-earned money, buy some place, and they did everything correct. There's no penalty involved. It's not dilapidated. It's in good repair, and you want to take my land to give to somebody else. And here's the part. They're trying to compensate you, but half the time it's not the market value.
Of course not, man. It's maybe a quarter of what the house is worth.
Yeah, that's where the shit gets shady. Like, if that's the case, you need to overcompensate me so I can put myself in a better situation. That's how they get you. They're undercompensating. And so, not that the money is always the issue. Don't get me wrong, you're taking my home. And especially if she's an elderly lady, she may have, that this is her retirement. This is where she plans on being for the rest of her life. She probably has 20 years to live, which I'm not, I don't know the lady personally, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you could have waited it out. You know what I'm saying? You didn't have to do this shit. And as for immigrants, that's just going on over in Gaza right now, where these settlers are taking people's property. Like, no, they're doing some fucked up ass colonizer bullshit everywhere right now, and they're doing it to the people who are legitimately living there. Don't get me wrong. In America, we fucked the Native Americans over. In England, I'm sure they fucked over the original inhabitants of their shit too. But we have a tendency now that we're doing the problem people don't get is whenever they do this fucked up ass behavior, they will do it to their own citizens also. We turn a blind eye when it's somebody else and they look different than us. But in the long run, you must understand they will do the same behavior to you, because government's nothing but a fucking money machine. So they don't really give a fuck about your well-being.
When you look into the story of Wounded Knee in the United States, the fight between the Native Americans and the U.S. government, they were using every form of low-down, dirty trickery to deceive these people, and they kept doing it over and over and over. This is not a lie. I'm not being hyperbolic. This is public record. It's history. You can go and look this up. The problem is that everybody wants to put that in the past and say, oh, well, that was a different time in life. So it's different when the government is doing it using the military versus legalese, when they're hiding behind pencils and pieces of paper. Oh, but nobody's dying. Yeah, but you're destroying communities.
If you need an example, look at the Cherokee. I remember being in college, and one of my professors was explaining to me that, hey, the Cherokees gave up their tribehood. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Then you start doing the research through these different messed up ass land deals and people stealing, going all the way back to the Gullah Wars of the 1400s. That the Cherokee, which is part of the Iroquois Confederacy, and all this other stuff, and you find out that sometimes they lost their land, sometimes they gave it up, sometimes they kept the land but lost their tribal hood.
There's Indians that disliked them because they didn't fight.
They fought in the beginning, but then they stopped fighting. Yeah, there's legitimately where they stopped fighting, and they kind of sided with the white man. Oh, well, fuck it, we'll learn the language and all this. And you don't realize that they gave up the tribehood somewhere along the way. They got it back, but now there's another tribe called the Lumbee tribe we had talked about, and they're trying to be recognized by the federal government. They were recognized in 1956 by Congress, but when they were trying to be recognized, it's the Cherokees that put up a fight. Like, oh no, we don't want them to be recognized. This is so fucking petty. But the point we're making is that so these people tried to conform, they got fucked over. So you can't win when it comes to your land. You have to fight for your land, because if you don't, they'll take it and not give you shit, or they'll make up a lie about you and make all of a sudden now you look like the aggressor when the whole time you're the victim. This is an important notion that you must understand. This territorial boundary shit is some real shit. And yes, petty is this. No, it's not petty at all. This is something that we're dealing right here in America. They'll recategorize you and all of a sudden take your land, saying that that the land doesn't belong to you, or you have no colonial right to it. So yeah, that's the shit they're doing right now.
What's messed up though in the UK is the white people are the indigenous tribe there. The problem is that the invaders are people of color. And the people of color are coming in and pretty much like just changing the entire culture of that place. I don't think that's cool because that shit has been done here before, where the invader were white people and the indigenous were people of color, and they completely destroyed their culture.
And when we say invaders, we're talking about these Muslim immigrants.
But what I'm saying is that, nobody really cares because this is white people. No, that's wrong. Like, it's wrong whether they're white or whether they're black, they're red, it doesn't matter. When you come in and you just take over a whole area and you dominate the people and you get rid of their culture and the government is helping to make that happen, that sounds so incredibly self-destructive.
They're making a ghetto on purpose. They're making these areas, well, look, we don't feel like dealing with y'all, since there's so many of us. And so we're going to stick you here.
France has a big problem with that right now. They let so many Arabs come into their country. There's entire neighborhoods where they just control everything. And I'm like, well, you created this situation.
Look, Europe has a real problem with immigrants right now, is what you're saying. And you read about these articles, and you don't realize how bad it is. These people are, they're making gangs, beating up with the regular people, running everybody. They just want to control the area. And we see this over and over again. And the government really ain't doing shit because, you know what, we're getting money from this, we're getting money from that. And we don't care about our regular people. That's some bullshit.
No, but the bigger picture is that most people don't understand is what is being slowly brought upon the entire world is the fourth industrial revolution. So because of this, you have to get rid of any type of sovereignty. When you get rid of sovereignty and you get rid of personal land ownership and you get rid of the ownership of assets, then people are just units. People are not a collective anymore.
When you talk about the new industrial revolution, slave labor has
Fourth industrial revolution.
Fourth. Slave labor has always been the easiest way to do shit. Like, okay, we need a bunch of employees to implement something. And we'll make the most money if we don't pay these motherfuckers. So you get them to come in, you're paying them pennies on the dollar, you promise them whatever, and so they don't mind eroding away the I don't want to say indigenous, the original inhabitants or whoever's there.
The territorial integrity.
They eroded away. And like I said, now you have this labor force who's willing to work for much cheaper than your regular. You make the rules.
In a gig economy.
In America, we have minimum wage, but they find ways around it. And that's the biggest issue, is that we create laws, but there's always a loophole, or we'll break the law temporarily to get what we want, and we don't penalize people the same and things like that. So then you got people coming over here working on AI, building this physical infrastructure, and you're getting rid of the people that were here before. You are fucking their money up, so now their money ain't worth shit. Or inflation is so bad. Inflation only helps people that have high debt ratio. If you got a lot of debt, then you don't mind inflation because your money just became more valuable. But if you're a working individual and now all of a sudden $10 don't buy what $50 used to buy a few years ago, that shit fucks everybody up. And that's where we are right now.
There's a story that's developing, and it's still fairly new, but Tesla wants to turn cars into Amazon Web Services. Have you heard about this?
No. So you want my car to make deliveries for you? You know, I own the car? Is that what you're talking about?
While your car is charging at night. Basically, they look at when you're not using your car, and they want your car to be connected to a network and use it for computing power. Tesla envisions turning its future cars into mobile distributed data centers where it can monetize a car's onboard computing power like Amazon AWS, their huge network. Elon Musk.
So you mean to tell me I own this motherfucker, allegedly? And that's another thing. You don't own your Tesla. There's too many cases of this shit. So what you're saying is my car will be part of a much larger server when I'm not physically using it. And so do I get a discount on this shit? Am I getting paid?
So basically it's a fancy way of saying that Elon Musk wants to sell the computing resources in every one of Tesla's cars while they're not being driven. This would allow Tesla to sell idle computer power in all the cars across its fleet to the highest bidder, making Tesla some cold hard cash with virtually no extra effort. And such networking would also feed into Musk's dream for networking of fully self-driving robotaxis trained and powered by AI. If achievable, it could represent a radical reinvention of the way we understand cars to exist and operate today. So, I just told you that the fourth industrial revolution is the elimination of personal sovereignty, of sovereignty, and of ownership of what they call legacy devices, like a house. You know, legacy ownership of a house or a car or any type of like hard assets.
Look,
what this is doing is creating a system, an ecosystem that people will be early adopters and they will give into and get used to and submit to this. And everybody gets used to the idea of not using, not your car not being your car no more.
We've already talked about this, but we got to
That
talk
means,
about
hold on a second.
Yeah.
Stop. They're hacking your car while you're not using it. So they can hack your car whenever they want, even while you're using it.
Here's
there goes freedom right there.
Can you imagine NASCAR? Can you imagine buying your car, but they're renting out advertising space on your vehicle, and they're giving you pennies? So you're driving around with a big-ass fucking sticker on your car. Well, that's what they're doing with this shit. There's a big-ass sticker on your car. They're telling you, like, hey, we're paying you. But Musk is probably getting, like, say Musk is getting $100 an hour for this shit, but he's giving you $35 a month. That's the same situation. And here's another situation. You know, there's a CIA former spy that he's making the rounds. Not the young Bustamante dude, but the older guy with glasses. I forgot his name. Please forgive me. And I love watching his stuff. But one of the things,
John Kiriakou?
Kiriakou, yes. And one of the things he was talking about is like, yeah, the CIA has the ability to take control of your vehicle and drive it. Now, we're like, okay.
That's why my vehicle is 100% analog.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, there's a guy that's on JRE on a regular basis, and he's still, or I always say he's retired, but he was with the CIA. Mm-hmm. And he said all his cars are 100% analog. I said, how about that? He knows something.
And so, no, this is important. So we're all thinking of the Tesla, and we saw the little movie that was produced by Barack where the Teslas lost control and they all ran into each other.
Leave the world behind.
Yeah, they can do that on any vehicle. If you listen to Kiriakou, he's like, yeah, CIA has, if your car has a computer in it, The CIA has the ability to take control of your vehicle. Now, can they drive for the whole day or whatever? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But if they can take control where you can't control your vehicle, they have the ability to do two things. One, they can kill you. They can run that motherfucker off a bridge or cause an accident, and the first thing people are like, oh man,
like the reporter who wrote the report about the General McChrystal, like 10 years ago.
Yeah, this shit goes back to years ago. I remember when they had those accelerators sticking in those Toyotas, and I'm like, there were like 3 legitimate ones, but you found out like the other ones were just like fake. Some guys were trying to, have my accelerator stuck. But that's not the point. The point is they can make it look like they can suicide you. They can kill you at any time. Make it look like it was your vehicle, or they make it look like it's you. Like, oh man, this motherfucker was drunk coming home. Yada. But that's the problem when you don't own the technology in your vehicle. When these companies say they have an industrial, proprietary, whatever, whenever they say that shit, now you can't work on your own car, that kind of stuff. So now this is something that me and you talked about years ago. I always said I got one car that's analog. I said that years ago. I just really never pushed the shit. But the reason people are saying that is because you don't want your vehicle to not be yours. You don't want it where you can't work on your own vehicle. Because it's at one point in time, these car dealerships, car makers were making it, hey, this is proprietary, whatever, and you can't work on your own car. You got to take it to the dealership. That shit. And Congress shut that shit down. Went to the Supreme Court. They shut the shit down. And so yeah, you still can work on your own car, but those were the makings. Those were the pinnings of creating a situation where, again, you don't own anything. We keep talking about the media part because we're like, hey, you need to be able to buy your own CD. We need to go back to analog. We need to go back to either digital where you have a CD. And the reason we're saying that is because you said, your stepson came to you like, hey, Pop, you can't own your video games anymore. No, we don't have cartridges anymore. You even though you buy them, you have a digital copy. But at any time, they can either take the digital copy or, worse, they can change the digital copy. So can you imagine watching Star Wars and all of a sudden they you know what? We don't want Princess Leia anymore. We want Prince Geneva on there and some trans dude on there and this is the way it always was. They have the ability to change media, and now you're second guessing yourself, and you got this Mandela effect shit going on. Like, hey, we fucked up the timelines. We want to change this shit. There are so many different things that can happen when you don't own anything. And now they're making it normal to the point where you just can't afford it. This is for the best. That's all bullshit. Stop this shit now. Put up a fight. Disagree. Get a group of people together. Man, fuck this shit. And here's another problem. America has enough land for everybody. England, not so much. but we got enough land for everybody.
So one thing you got to be aware of is that the proposed mobile data centers will create the need for a higher frequency, faster data transfer. That means this is going to push for 6G. 6G is required for their plans of having fully autonomous cars, a fully mobile data centers, all these things. You need a higher bandwidth to transmit this data. 6G is required for that. Nobody knows the effect that is going to have on the environment and people. There's already people complaining about the effects of 5G and what it does to them. So then you amp that up even more and you have 6G. Of course, it's going to get even worse. These are things that people don't take into consideration. And you have all these early adopter dodo bird ass people that are just like, yep, YIMBY. Yes, in my backyard.
It's the same thing when Denzel was talking about being first as being accurate when it comes to newspapers and media and reporting the news. These early adopters, they just want the fashion of being first. That's all. They don't care about the implementation. They don't care about the long-term effects. It's like, hey, I'm the first to have this kind of computer. I mean, you're the first one to get brain cancer that we didn't know was going to happen. Sometimes you have to wait till they get the bugs out the system. Same thing when a new car comes out. When they first develop a new car, you need to get the second, third generation because there are bugs in there that they didn't get out. And so being first is not more important than being healthy.
A lot of this stuff is really dangerous, but what it talks about is your place that you live, the places that you consider safe spaces or places where you go and gather with people of like minds,
Or sacred. How about that part? Go ahead.
these places will begin to shrink and shrink and shrink. But it's because we are allowing it to happen. Because people have to push back. One person can start it, but it takes a group to really get it going and get momentum behind it. They are afraid of groups. That is the reason why they turn us on each other. That's why they use social media. That's why DARPA is so invested in social engineering right now, because you can steer the herd wherever you want it to go.
And it seems organic at first.
Yeah, it appears that way, but it's engineered to appear organic. The same way all these pop cultural, musical trends appear organic, but they're not. There was this magazine in the 80s called Tiger Beat. Tiger Beat was this, it was basically for like young white girls.
Yep.
And it had like, all these young
Heartthrobs
white
and
male, basically actors and like singers. But when you listen to like the songs that these stars that were in the magazines were singing, they're written by middle-aged and older men. So hold on a second. Why are these middle-aged older men writing these songs for these teenage girls? Because they're trying to create a certain type of culture that can be manipulated, because they know that they are an emotionally dominant type of human being.
and they want to get a hold of the youth early. They want to get a hold of your mind early and start manipulating you early to the point where then when you're 30 years old, it just seems natural. They're talking about K-pop right now. K-pop is nothing but R&B boy bands from back in the day.
No, K-pop is black R&B music watered the fuck down.
Yes, and
if you listen, because the reason why they sound like they got a little more swag than their white counterparts is because Korean people have a little bit of soul compared to white people. And so when you look at, like the way they perform the music, it's more impressive than watching like NSYNC or something like that, because they can dance. They can sing. Not the same as black people, but they got their own style. And so what you're seeing is just watered down distillation of that. So they have, Korean fried chicken, KFC. And you can get fried chicken in Atlanta and many other places, even in Omaha. We went and got it that one time. That is something that was taught to them by black people. And now they just take it and they ran with it. That's fine. I mean, it's just fried chicken. But still, it originates somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? So this whole phenomenon of like K-pop, it comes from white boy bands who are copying black R&B singers.
One of the deepest interviews I saw recently was the one with John Cena, because, he's retiring. And so he's talking about stuff. He's talking about when he was in China.
Man, fuck that dude.
So what he's talking about is that he had did some commercials and stuff, and he had learned some Mandarin, and he was like, and he had made some faux pas, some really bad mistakes. And he said, the lesson I learned is just because you know the language does not mean you know the culture. And that's how people get confused. And he's breaking down that you think because you can say a few words that you understand the meaning.
Yeah, but one thing that's not forgivable is when he apologized to the fucking Chinese government on TV for some shit that he didn't have to apologize for.
Look, I get it. But what I'm saying is that is that colonizer mentality. I can speak the language, means I understand the culture. No, you don't. You don't know where it came from. You don't know the blood, sweat, and tears behind it. You don't know that shit.
But here's the thing, though. There's a difference between Chinese culture and communist oppression. There's two different things. So that's why you really got to know the culture. You really got to understand history. You got to understand who is controlling these people. Because there are people in China that fucking hate the communists, man. They fucking hate them.
Look, there's people everywhere that hate it. But that's the problem, that we don't know real history. And whoever's in charge picks the history. And this is the exact same
I know
situation.
my history. I know my fucking history.
Indeed, but that's the situation we're in, and that's why people keep getting recategorized. That's
But
why you
see,
really
okay,
think it's,
but that comes back to this whole know thyself again, because with the rise of artificial intelligence and it being everywhere, you have all these things where people can just lie and say this and that. There's this fake AI video that's on social media right now, and it has all these young women talking about how many bodies they have. It's not real. It's generated. Now, here's the thing though. If you generate that and people sort of think it's real, it's like WAP and like all these songs like that, that where it's celebrating this hooker prostitute culture and the demoralization campaign that's going on to cause the slow demolition
decaying
of
society.
culture and society within a country. That's why on Chinese TikTok, there ain't no fucking dancing. There ain't none of that bullshit. It's all science experiments and things that are like basically straight and normal and really fucking lame.
And the reason they do that is so these kids, their kids will behave differently. That's what they care about.
Yeah,
They
but
don't.
them little motherfuckers got VPNs and they trying to watch the shit in America.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Look, um, here's the problem with a consistent lie. If you've been, there's so much lying going on with AI that people don't know the truth anymore. And what drives me crazy, I'm giving an example. My wife was talking. She has this group chat thing where they're all trying to, tap each other's up, build their social media profile and all this other bullshit. But the thing is, one of our homegirls is on there and she's talking about, I just saw this documentary where such and such killed such and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, and I'm listening to her talk. She's really, I didn't know that. And I'm like, that's AI. It, my mind works differently than some other people. Where the second I start watching something now, because we have AI, if that cadence doesn't sound correct,
There's
or
that and the way the skin looks. Because there's this thing called the uncanny valley where like I was watching something online. This is to your point. I was watching something online and I'm looking at it, and because I'm a cinematographer, I've trained my eyes for decades to
look for
like
certain
see
shit.
light and
Yes.
to pay attention to faces. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, this shit's artificial. There's not enough flaws in it. There's
How
not
about
enough
how about AI
flaws in
can't
the
do
human
fingers?
face.
Like when you sit there and watch the fingers and the finger disappears or merges or
They're getting
part of the
better at the
body,
finger thing though.
I'm sure they are.
But
But
the whole like things disappearing and reappearing, yeah, those are
yeah,
hallucinations. Those are mistakes.
but when you hear somebody talk and they don't have the cadence is the same, they never take a breath. There's no punctuation, and I'm like that's not Joe Rogan talking. That's not Billy Carson. That's not such and such. And like they get me for the first 10 seconds, and all of a sudden, wait a minute. And so, but these other people, once they hear a celebrity speak, they're so excited to get to get the information first. Doesn't matter if it's true, and now they're like, man, such and such killed Tupac, such and such killed Ben Franklin, all this bullshit. And I'm like, so you couldn't tell? I'm like, you were so excited to hear something that you had never heard before that you can't tell that this is AI. I got a problem with that.
Right. But that is part of the integrity that has to be maintained, whether it's a territory, whether it is essential to your psyche. These are things that have to be maintained. Land is at the core of territorial integrity. Home ownership is the most prominent form of sovereignty. In the 2008 financial crisis, predatory mortgage practices were at the center of the problem. That mortgage crisis was done to devalue entire neighborhoods. It was estimated that it would take $8 trillion to bail out those families that would lose their homes in the 2008 crisis. That did not happen. Instead, $29 trillion was funneled into the Bank of International Settlements. In 1994, Charlie Rose interviewed Sir James Goldsmith. Goldsmith warned that the creation of the World Trade Organization would destroy the middle class by devaluation of the US dollar. The central bank was planning for an economic reset that would crystallize with the 2020 pandemic. When the September 11, 2001 attacks happened, there was a $4.1 trillion missing from the U.S. government's HUD program, and the Department of Defense. Donald Rumsfeld only spoke about the money that was missing from the DoD. He didn't mention the missing HUD money. That $4.1 trillion was taken away from the American public by the Bank of International Settlements and given to breakaway civilizations. Just so you know, that bank was founded by the Knights Templar. It was created after World War I, and the Bank of England and international bankers wanted complete sovereignty and immunity.
Hey, you just said some deep shit. So that was HUD money for housing. Literally, if you're talking about breakaway societies, they can justify their actions. I'm not agreeing with their actions. Let me be clear. But they can justify it by saying, like, hey, in case we got to go someplace else, we can establish settlements there. So
No. But that's the whole thing. You don't get to go.
Yeah. No. Again, make it clear. I'm not justifying their actions. I'm saying that there's a couple loopholes that they can use.
They got the money already.
And if you don't, no.
But here's the crazy part. You
bought a car
they can just print this
nigga.
money from nothing, but they still want to take it from you. The Bank of International Settlements, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the United Nations are completely sovereign and immune from litigation and any type of enforcement. They are free to make any plans to steer the course of human history without any interruption.
And they have unlimited money to do so.
They can lose trillions of dollars and have it replaced by taxpayers. Those people exist in pools of intergenerational wealth, completely insulated from major world events, operating without taxes and regulations, and existing in a completely separate civilization.
Hey, one of the scariest things that's going on right now, and we've talked, I think the next thing you won't be able to talk about ain't over there in the Middle East. It's going to be AI. So I'm not for AI, not the version they're selling us, like
the control grid, Skynet AI. Each AI, data center that's being built is a control mode. It's a node. It's like basically a headquarters for.
You just talked about.
It's like a police substation for.
Yeah, individual substations. You just talked about Teslas. Like, hey, when your Tesla is charging, they're using it as a computer part of the net. So one of the things I watched recently that was crazy that nobody's talking about. So they said all these American companies altogether spent $17 trillion on AI. And I've seen a lot of situations where it's not working. A friend of ours, his whole job went to AI. It crashed for about a week or two. Then they brought all the employees back to the office kind of thing. You're hearing AI in weird places and it's not working. But these companies spent $17 trillion on AI. The American economy is only like $1 or $2 trillion a year. You know what I'm saying? 1.7 trillion a year. So I don't want to get the numbers wrong. So it's somewhere around. So why would you spend so much money on something that?
Today there was a story that was going around about Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, is basically telling all members of the armed forces that they have to learn how to use AI and use it every day. But he doesn't explain how and why they should use it.
Look, a friend of mine, he said, hey, Ren, I use Chat. So I'm not dissing a dude. He went to school for computer security shit. That shit was a big deal a few years back. So he was thinking about leaving our job. He was like, hey, I need something else. It ain't quite paying enough. At the time, we were making like $87,000. He's like, I need more. I got a wife, I got a kid, I need more. So he pays for himself to go to school. He goes to school at night, gets it all done, and then about a year into it, after he gets his degree or his certificate, I'm not sure what it was. I think he already had a degree, but I think it might have been a certificate. Please forgive me. He's like, all of a sudden he gives me like, hey, it's gone. I said, what do you mean? He said, the market's gone. He said they're using AI to do the job that I was doing. He said, he said a program that would took me. He
just wasted all that time and money.
I didn't even hold it. I ain't got to that part yet. So, yes, that is what he just basically said. He said a program that would have took me a week to do, AI can do in 6 to 7 hours. So what he went the other way with it. So he started paying for Chat GPT and started using Chat GPT just to see how it would work. He said, hey, you can put into it like, hey, what would my house look like if I did this? And he was doing that kind of stuff just on his own to learn it. Not He doesn't depend on it. You understand what I'm saying? He's not this kind of, oh, all right, I can't think for myself. No, not that at all. But he was so curious. So he said, you really need to kind of get into it. He said, check it out, at least learn how to use it. I'm not saying that you need to do all your work with it. None of that. He said, but you need to be aware of how it does affect society and what it can and can't do. But this whole idea that it's sort of replace all these employees, or whenever you have a talk with your kid, the first thing your kid says is, well, Dad, it's doing jobs that nobody else wants to do.
Well, check this out. Some of the one of the most biggest impacts that it's having is in the legal and finance industry. So
yes,
law firms are getting rid of a lot of their low-level employees.
Yep, that's real. If you type in, I asked, you know this for a fact, I asked for a demand letter. It gave me one, but then I reached out to some like living lawyers and got some, tweak it. But all of them said, you wrote this yourself. I said, yeah, I didn't. I just knew because I did something in the past. And if you type in demand letter, if you type in legal paperwork, law firms pop up, and the Chat GPT will whatever AI I used by mistake, it took stuff from their past and gave me examples of that. So there are good ways of using it. There are good ways of using it. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, but it should not be. It shouldn't think for you. It shouldn't replace. It's not replacing you. You know what I'm saying?
So, what I'm talking about is how when you are needing to protect your home, to protect your neighborhood, to protect your way of life, sometimes you have to intervene. Sometimes you have to intervene when city planning wants to create something that's going to go right through your neighborhood. Sometimes you have to basically get together with other people
and guard your territory. AI is, like I said, that's an aversion of it. They're taking your jobs. They're taking your ability to think. So sometimes y'all gotta like, hey, stand up to that motherfucker. I know it seems impossible, but pushing back is necessary.
100% it is. But you also have to be vocal about where your stopping point is, where the line in the sand is. We often find ourselves in situations that are created by other people, and we did nothing wrong, but yet now we're actually the victim because we weren't aware of what was happening around us.
Yeah, it's one thing to be ignorant of something. It's another thing to turn a blind eye to it.
So then you have to then remain vigilant. Not to the point of having anxiety all the time. No. Just having enough awareness to know that, okay, well, I own this land, and I got to make sure if there is a data center that's going up or they want to propose a data center, I have to get together with my neighbors and basically tell them, hey, this is bad for us. We got to do something about this. So I would have jobs out in the countryside from time to time. And I'd be driving down some country road, and I'd drive by this house, and I would slow down because it'd be this huge sign in their front yard, and it says data center with like a cross, a red slant across it. Mm-hmm. And basically it says no data centers. And then it had, one of those IR squares that you could scan and basically go to like a site that this neighborhood created so people could sign up a petition. Say, hey, we are not cool with this shit. Now, there is crazy stuff that these data centers are doing. In the cities in Arizona, that they're basically giving all of their water runoff to these data centers
to cool
everything down to maintain these temperatures. Now, what they're not telling you is the data centers then take this water that they filtered through their systems, and it has all of these hard chemicals and hard minerals in it, heavy metals in there. And it goes back into the water system. There are people who live within a mile of a data center who have gone blind, who become infertile, who have gotten weird forms of cancer. Weird forms of cancer that look like it would be something from a person who's a chain smoker, but this person doesn't even smoke.
Look, so we grew up in the 80s. The big deal back in the 80s was toxic waste and nuclear waste. You remember that shit? And these neighborhoods would get together and vote. Like, there'd be a train with nuclear waste on it. We don't want that train coming by our neighborhood. There'd be places where they would literally bury toxic waste, and then they would propose it because they kept saying it was safe. And these people would get together and fight that shit, and later on you find out it wasn't safe. Like, literally, the places that they would end up burying it in poor neighborhoods or poor rural areas that weren't organized. So when you're not organized, you always hear Malcolm talk about let's get organized. When you're not organized, that means there's no clear communication of what's going on. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. Just communicate the information to me, and we'll decide how to take care of it. But this was a big deal back in the 80s. Is toxic waste was everywhere. They love to put toxic waste different places. I remember they were talking about doing landfills, and I remember being a kid, and we were taught that after they have a landfill for so many years, they would put a park on top of it, and it would just break down.
Right.
And I remember,
they call these things Superfund sites.
Yep.
And these areas that were basically off limits for any type of vegetation or humans to even be around, they would clean them up and then build developments on it. There's one here, it's called Atlantic Station. Atlantic Station is in the center of town. It's in Midtown. And this is an area where everybody comes to go and watch a movie, have drinks, go to a club. Mm-hmm. They have a gym there that's busy all the time. And this place used to be a mining facility for heavy metals.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
People breathing that shit in. And the shit don't leave. You know, I can talk on a personal level, I can talk on a major level. We weren't talking about underground nuclear testing because when the government did it, even as bad as that sounds, and you can look in the 50s and 60s how the cancer rate went up after this shit, whatever. But the reason I bring that up is because right now in Israel, they're trying to build another canal. They got the Suez Canal, but they want to build their own canal that's going to, of course, go through Palestine without permission. But they've already said that if we build this canal, that we're going to have to use underground nukes to do it. They're already telling you this. So, they don't even care about people getting sick, people getting hurt, but this is the kind of stuff that happened in America, and you would think that people would have learned from that. Like, hey, we learned that this shit ain't a good idea, but nope. They're worried about that money. They're worried about building a new canal so they can have more control over the Gulf and stuff. So again, these are the things that happened that we had to fight in the past, and we had to realize that we didn't realize it was a problem. So, yeah, like I said, when you find this New York Times article about I think it was called Plowshare and Gas Buggy. When you find this article and you read it, it tells you all these companies that had permission to do this stuff and everything else. And they talk about how in the 80s, how all these different cancers just blew up. And of course, they tell you it's smoking. It wasn't smoking. This goes what Roscoe was talking about. These people had cancer as if they smoked, but it wasn't from smoking. And the only other example probably would be the asbestos use back in the day, in the shipping yards. People had all kinds of different forms of lung cancer that it looks like you've been chain smoking for 35 years straight and you're only 12 years old. You know what I'm saying? That shit. So, yeah, when we talk about territory, we're not just talking about physical. There's mental aspects. There's spiritual aspects.
Moral.
There's moral aspects that you shouldn't cross or that you shouldn't be forced to cross. And that's what they're doing right now. So it's like I said, it's important.
You mentioned in some conversation that we had about how there was this talk show, person who has a talk show podcast, and they were talking about how this female rapper, who was obviously a plant, came out with a second album, and everybody was like, this is so obvious that this is forced.
Dog shit. This is a package with dog shit in it. I just remember the song that they were talking about because no, I can be immature at times. Her first album has some catchy shit on it. We all was dancing to it. But that second one, I think the song was "Fuck My Baby Daddy." It didn't make sense. It just didn't fit. And this guy was saying, it's clear some record exec told her to do this.
It's a demoralization campaign. It was obvious with that.
And we know this. We know this for a fact. Whenever we refer to the music industry and what it gets pushed through and things like that, so we know a lot of that stuff is a plan. But the bottom line is that it's not organic. Music is supposed to be organic. Music should be spiritual. And don't get me wrong. You have to like. We grew up on NWA, fuck the police, but that shit was necessary when it came out. We were getting beat up. We didn't. The only other person to talk about police brutality was Richard Pryor. You know, that was the first time I heard the term police brutality. And you gotta remember, Fuck the Police came out before Rodney King. So when that shit happens, a lot of black folks were surprised. White folks, I guess this is wrong. I'm like, dude, that happens in every neighborhood, every Saturday night, everything. And you guys don't even care. So that's the whole thing, is that I think what happens is things don't matter until they do. Things don't matter until you realize it's a thing. And that's what we're talking about with territory. We're definitely talking about that stuff when you live in a neighborhood and they have toxic waste behind your house. When you live in a neighborhood that's too close to one of these data centers, the closest one we got is about 7 miles away.
Dude, no. So it wasn't even a data center. I remember one time I came back home to visit, and there was this loud noise that was coming from the Omaha Home for Boys over the fence.
No shit.
And I think I told you about it. Because I went and I sat in the backyard. I'm like, what is this loud noise, man? And like what it was this high-pitched like motor that was running. Like
a diesel engine or something that's off in the distance or some shit.
But no, it wasn't like a diesel engine. Like it had like almost a piercing whine. And it was just running and running and running. And I'm like, nobody's complaining about this? And so eventually what happened, the homeowners around there complained to the city, and they had to do something to either get rid of that or put encase that thing in like a silencer box, because this sound, dude, it was so like disruptive. Like you could not just sit in your backyard and like just have a conversation. You would hear this in the background. I'm like, dude, what the fuck is that?
And ain't nobody complained about it. You know what I'm saying? Not enough people complain. When enough people complain, shit gets done.
Yeah. Like, that shit annoyed the fuck out of me. I'm like, is somebody gonna do something about this shit? Like, what the fuck?
Like, y'all don't hear this?
It's crazy, though, man, because when it comes to territorial integrity, noise pollution is a problem.
Yes. That's a real thing.
Anybody who's black or brown knows what I'm talking about when it comes to noise pollution, because you got somebody that wants to blast some fucking music, that wants to blast some music, and with no care for the fact that people got to get up and go to work the next morning.
Kids got to go to school, yeah, they don't give a damn.
Now, in my neighborhood, they don't do that shit, because that will get shut down pretty fast. But at the old house you had over there, did you ever have any problems with that?
The only time I had problems with noise, I threw a party once, and
No, I'm not talking about you being the noisemaker. Yeah, I'm talking about people around you making noise.
Nah, every once in a while you hear a car drive by with a boom, but that's it. And it wasn't. And nobody ever got out of control with the shit. You know what I'm saying? So no.
I think what it is, because over time, Omaha has built up like enough ordinances where to prevent shit like that. It sounds cliche, but at the entrance to the state, there's a sign that says, "Welcome to Nebraska, the good life." And part of that ethos is basically respecting your neighbors. And there's a kind of like an unwritten code that like a lot of us live by, but it's also enforced by laws there. That you're not going to do too much extra to basically make your neighbors uncomfortable.
Like I said, if you call the police here, even in the black neighborhood, they would show up. They would come and see what.
Well, because they won't lock niggas up, so yeah, they gonna show up.
So some people ain't got shit else to do. But like I remember that time you said that white dude ran through with the orange afro, ran through your backyard, and the cops chased his ass. We were kids.
While I was watching Cops.
Yeah, I remember you like, "God, you ain't gonna believe this." Look, the reason this territorial integrity is an issue is because it's been eroded away slowly. and they made you comfortable with doing shit that you should not be comfortable with.
They took some clippers and just faded a motherfucker up, dude.
And sometimes what people don't understand, when they put shit on the news, it's not to give you information. It's actually to make you comfortable with this bad situation.
It's basically them telling you what they're going to do. It's their way of asking for permission, but not asking for permission.
And then you downplay it. You're like, oh, police brutality is not a big deal. Then all of a sudden, somebody gets killed, and then we're marching about this shit. But the truth of the matter is, that shit should have been addressed a long time ago. And like I said, when they show this shit on the news, it's not because they want to inform you. It's because they want to make you comfortable with evil. And all of a sudden, now that you're comfortable with evil, you don't speak up about it. Like, man, that shit happens all the time. It doesn't matter. Here's another thing. Just because something happens all the time doesn't make it right. But second, something may happen all the time in New York, Chicago, and L.A., but it don't happen all the time in Omaha, Nebraska. It doesn't happen all the time in parts of Georgia. But because you saw that shit on TV, because of some rap music they put out there like, hey, it's okay because it happens other places. No, it's not okay.
That's programming.
It's programming, and you need to speak up about it. If you don't, then you're inviting some shit into your home, that vampire into your home that you can't control.
That company that everybody talked about in the 90s, meeting with all of the record executives in rap music, that company is called Wackenhut. Wackenhut has been around for 200 years. That company has been involved since the Old West in stagecoaches and providing security for the banks. And they went on to be the contractor that provided security for Area 51. And so they were also involved in creating a mind control program through gangster rap music to basically control the black population of America, the young black population. Not old, the young black population.
They fill the prisons. They want to fill them prisons. They need 50% occupancy for them to make money. And they don't care why those people are in there.
And they were building, prisons for little kids that were in elementary school, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like
That's
they
crazy.
were building prisons before they even had people to put in them.
I believe the children are our future.
Right. Well, they believe that shit for sure. They're a future investment. But these are the lines. These are the lines you cannot let people cross. There's only so much shit that you will tolerate before you're like, nope, that's it. Before you become Michael Douglas in Falling Down. Okay? That motherfucker who just basically snaps one day and goes to the Army Navy surplus store and just walks around with a shotgun in a fucking tote bag and shit. Yeah.
Look. Hey, sometimes I think we don't realize that people snap. And I'm not making excuses for the behavior, but when you get enough shit, you will snap. When you can't take care of your kids, your wife, whatever, you snap. When you can't take care of your husband, whatever, you snap. And people don't see the snap. Now, I see the snap coming before it does. Sometimes I'm like, hey, shit, that nigga got it coming. Let that nigga go. But other times you're like, hey, if you just sit there and talk to somebody. I just heard somebody talking about where he said, man, y'all don't even know. I was on the ledge one day. I was about to jump. And somebody had a problem. They came to me, and they were further on the edge than I was, and I was able to talk them off the ledge because I was going through it. Not the exact experience, not the physical experience, but the mental experience. And he said, me saving that other person, helping them, helped me to get down off the ledge too. That you have to have empathy. You have to be able to recognize. I'm not saying everybody needs sympathy, but you can recognize when somebody's struggling. Even when you try to help somebody, one of the things I don't do, because I did for my son, one of the things I don't ask what's wrong all the time. I just ask, hey, you need help? Well, something's on your mind. Because I'm not trying to make you relive the shit that you go. I'm not trying to trigger you, but I can see that you're dealing with something. If you see somebody dealing with something, ask them, hey, what's up? What can I do to help? I don't need to know the specifics of what you're going through to know that we can talk about it. Because that's the whole thing now. Everybody wants to know. When my son passed, a lot of people kept asking me what happened. They wanted details. They didn't care about how I felt. They didn't care about what I was going through. They wanted details. And I said, bitch, I'm not your entertainment. I am not here to make your day. I'm not a cautionary tale. I'm not that shit. But if somebody wants to talk and have a real conversation and check on me, I got you. But if you want to sit here and need some shit for you to talk about, in the other room, man, go fuck yourself, my nigga, for real.
Yeah. They basically want to list, it's kind of like a parasite type of situation.
That's a very good way, a symbiotic relationship, if you will. It's like they feed off you, but they don't provide you with anything. Sometimes they do, most of the time they don't. So nah, my nigga, fuck that.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, you look at the things that we've been talking about here and how the places that you live in, the people that enforce the laws in the areas that you live in, and the ideologies that they want to force upon the people in these areas are things that should be of concern to you. And these large multinational organizations that are free from litigation and any type of enforcement, they are the ones that are trying to steer us down this path. When you look at these dystopian science fiction stories,
you always wonder how they got there.
Here's the thing, though. These are basically futures without humanity. Whenever you hear the word dystopian, most of the time it's devoid of humanity. And that's fear porn. So don't really spend too much time with those kind of stories. As somebody who grew up on sci-fi and fantasy and comic books and shit, I started to see a trend of like all these like dystopian dark futures, and I'm like, hey man, like whoever you are writing this shit, go outside and like get some sunlight, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like go play some basketball, like go hang out with your friends, like go get laid, like just go live life. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of these dudes that were writing this stuff had no life, and they just sat in like windowless rooms typing away all day, on this fear-ridden imagination. You know what I'm saying? Like
they had pussy deprivation. Look, one of the best things that you ever did to me as a friend was introduce me to Richard Pryor. I knew about Richard Pryor, but you had all these albums. And the example that I give, just talking about this, he said, nigga, I went to the movie to go, I went to the movie to see this movie, Love and Run, and I noticed, ain't no niggas in it. Y'all ain't looking for us to be here. And we laugh, but the story that he's telling you is that
there was not one dude. The crazy part about that movie, I've watched that movie 1,000 times. There's not one. And listen. And they shot this movie in a mall in Dallas, Texas. So there's black people around they can go snatch off the street.
They were there. Yeah, they were in the vicinity. You could have grabbed one nigga.
There was not one black person anywhere in that movie. Not a single one.
The point I'm trying to make is that's that shit when you talk about territory. That these people are carving out their territory in the future, and their idea of a perfect future does not include you. But here's the problem. What my brother just told you is now this perfect future doesn't include humans. And you always, when you think about the Terminator, when you think about the Matrix, because they were written by the same lady, when you think about Mad Max, Beyond Thunder, you see how people are fighting over this different stuff.
There's a TV show called Dark Matter. You should watch it. It's pretty good. And I think they shoot it in Chicago. So it kind of puts you in the mind of like Tales from the Dark Side and like all those shows that they would shoot in that area, like Night Stalker and stuff. Yep. But it's about parallel realities. But in this show, there are one or two realities that are really positive and upbeat. And one of the characters decides to stay in that parallel reality. They're like, you know what? It's so fucking nice here. Like, I'm staying here. Fuck going back to that bullshit.
I ain't trying to fix nothing no more.
It's crazy because when September 11th happened, it seemed like we were like blasted into a parallel reality. Like that G.I. Joe episode, Worlds Without End. That shit, dude.
The synthoids and shit.
Man, that shit makes me think about a lot of stuff a lot, dude. I'm like, man, it seems like we've been pushed into that Worlds Without End parallel reality where Cobra fucking won and shit. I'm like, this is crazy.
Okay, the second that I lost respect for politics was when George Bush got. So September 11th happened, and I thought that when the election come, they would get rid of him because this shit happened on his watch. No, people voted for him more, and I'm like, it didn't make sense to me. I'm like, what are you talking about? This dude sit here and this shit happened under his watch. And it was all these young white folks that said that
people were gaslit into thinking, well, if we change presidents now, things could be even more dangerous. And I'm like, no, it's more of the same. Do you want more of the same? Then don't vote for this motherfucker.
His family was friends with Bin Laden's family. Yeah. Look, all I'm saying is that the media lies to you, and they give you information based on what they want, how they want you to behave. Again, I'm a gun guy, but John Stossel did a report years ago, and he explains that a good guy with a gun saves the day more times than anything else. But every TV show you see says a good guy with a gun messed it up. That's all bullshit. You'll see all these stories in the news about mass shooters and shit like that, but when somebody saves a day, they leave that part out. That's because they don't want you taking control and fighting. See, I know we got to go, so let me make it quick. When we were kids, if they would have a story on TV about a bully, and the dad of the kid would just like, put your dukes up, son, and you go show that bully who's boss. But no, Dad, I don't want to do that. One of the funniest stories of all time was Arnold on Different Strokes had a bully named the Gooch, and the Gooch would bully him, and all of a sudden, like in season 2, you saw the Gooch was a little white girl. You know what I'm saying? You would laugh. But we grew up back then where if you had a bully, there was only one way to handle a bully, was to punch him in the mouth. Punch her in the mouth. It didn't matter. Fast forward to the 90s, you got to call the kid's parents. You got to do it. Yeah, the reason they did that is to convince you that fighting is not the way to go. The reason they pushed Martin Luther King over Malcolm X because Malcolm talked about defending yourself at all costs. Martin talked about marching. Now, when you looked at his memoirs, you realize Martin was no pussy, and he was about that life. But how they portray it and I live in Omaha, Nebraska, and we got Martin Luther King Day, but we ain't got Malcolm X Day, and Malcolm's from here. That's because they don't want you fighting. But on the flip side,
fair, there is a parade every year on Malcolm X's birthday.
Yeah. But when me and you were in second, third grade, yeah, they didn't have that parade. That happened because we was in high school, and we started listening to rap music, and we realized how big a treasure this guy was once you read his autobiography. The point I'm making is they're convincing you that defending your territory is a bad thing, when defending your territory is the only way to be.
Yep. So look, there it is. Keep the integrity of your territory. Maintain it. That's all I got. We out. Peace.
Yo, holla back.